Hello, welcome to Pensions in 10 with me, David Brooks, on my own again this week. And this time we take a look at the recent developments in inheritance tax changes, and we look at the Institute of Actuaries' investigation into potential changes to pensions policy. Okay, so the first story to bring you up to date with is the ongoing inheritance tax changes. So this is the change to bring pension benefits or unspent pension benefits into the realms of inheritance tax from April 2027. So there's been an ongoing consultation with some of the regulations, and that consultation recently closed. So I would say, broadly speaking, the responses are supportive of the changes that were made in the previous version. So there's been a bit of a flip from previously. There was a lot of emphasis on pension schemes to account for the tax and make sure that the tax paid is correct. And that's now flipped to the representatives, the beneficiaries of any benefits to be paid out. So I think the industry is relatively happy with that, because it was actually virtually impossible to be able to do that from the way around it was done before. However, a lot of the consultation responses do note that there's going to be a lot of pressure on those families to get the information and work out what tax charges will be due. And they're, obviously in a stressed time when a loved one has passed away. So there's some compassion in some of the responses, and I still, and in some quarters in the industry, they're still, quite, against this and think it should go back the other way and a little bit more towards pension schemes, or tax it in some other ways, just levy income tax, or make it a lot more simple for everybody, noting that the taxman will still get their pay. So there's still a little bit of debate there. I'm not expecting it to change very much, or not from the government's perspective anyway. There's some technical changes, making sure that the regulations are consistent, and also some changes around suggested around survivor benefits. So there's some inconsistencies around how inherited pensions would work. In some cases, they're valued against the estate. In some cases, they're not. That probably needs to be leveled and equalised. However, another development from last week was that the House of Lords Treasury Committee have said they're looking into inheritance tax changes in general, so pensions, but also the changes in the agriculture sector. So I don't expect there to be a big change coming from that, because the House of Lords Committee could just make recommendations which the government would probably quite easily bat away. We've still got about 18 months until these rules are in place, so it's definitely something to keep an eye on and try to inform members. So trustees and employers watching, you still might want to just try to keep people updated with this, and I think another thing that we probably need to think about with inheritance tax and pensions is that it's still the case that for many people it's not going to be an issue, because they're married or in a civil partnership, and so there's exemptions and higher areas for inheritance tax-free benefits to go from one party to the other. So it becomes quite headline grabbing and quite emotive. Inheritance tax does seem one of those areas that people have strong feelings about, either strongly thinking it's a great way to equalise wealth transfer, but also in other ways people to think, well, it's my money and I want to give it to my family. So it's definitely something that people could think about advising members about, to ensure they're up to date and to correct any myths, or at least clarify what the position currently is and when it's likely to change. One of the things we're seeing a lot is people taking action to try to avoid future tax changes, which may not impact them at all anyway. So yeah, that's where we are on inheritance tax. And a final story today is looking at policy and thinking around the future of pensions in the UK. A lot of challenges, obviously the demographic challenge of an ageing population, meaning a lot of more stress on the working age population to pay for the pensions of those that have come before. And the IFOA have done two really interesting things in the last week. So it's Alexandra Miles, who's chair of the IFOA Pensions Gap Working Group, and James Smith. He might have a title, but I don't know what it is. But James Smith as well. They did a paper called Retirement Reimagined, which I think is a really interesting paper into really restructuring the whole system to make sure it works for those on the lower end of the income scale, providing and what they talk about dignity in retirement, and they create a metric around minimum income standards to ensure that at various stages in people's life cycle in retirement, so they've divided up into 4 stages, and I'm going to try and do this from memory, but so there's a phase in stage where people see reducing working time and increasing reliance on their savings. Then there's the white linen years, where you're probably a bit more active and doing things. And then they have the television years where people are becoming less active. And then there's the later life, perhaps, going into care, those kind of things as well. And it's a really interesting report looking at the different challenges. They look to overseas, to other countries, to see some sort of potential solutions. And effectively, they're talking about proposing. I just want to make sure I get up on the screen. Proposing, perhaps a lower state pension, but with means-tested supplements at various stages that kick in to ensure we reach this minimum income standard that they define. And also universal employment pension. So this is structured a little bit like a CDC type arrangement. I won't go into the whole details. Again, we'll put a link to it because it really is interesting what they're talking about. But this provides sort of a basic level of income as well. And then these means-tested supplements kick in at various stages. Really interesting. They also key off some of the areas around productive finance. So they're talking about how that can be used to support UK growth, which is an interesting element, and also sidecar savings for people during their working lives, which is really interesting and something I think is a great idea to give people financial resilience, and that can be opted in or out depending on your circumstances. And if you don't need that and you'd rather just have the long-term savings in a pension, then you can do that. So really interesting policy paper. So I've read it once or twice. I'm going to have to go into it again. And it's a conversation starter, and I think there could be a lot of interesting things coming from that. But at the same time, the IFOA have also released some interesting case studies and some research into pension gaps with some videos and lots of information there, which is going to be really crucial towards that Pension Commission 2 review, which is focusing on primarily on the gaps from gender and cultural gaps and these things like that. So I think that's really interesting, and I'm really pleased to see that stuff coming out. Some labour of love, I think, for James and Alexandra. It looks like from their very personal, feel like a very personal paper, which is really nice to see some passion in there, and some real care has gone into that report. So if you're interested in the potential, what people are thinking about might happen for the state pension, you get lots of headlines. Again, it's one of those areas, a lot of misinformation, people talking about state pension going up really high or becoming completely means tested. And as always, these things are always sort of polar opposites, and they get strong reactions. Whereas the IFOA paper here does talk about more of a nuanced approach, to try to create a system. And in they're saying that their system will save up to £34 billion a year, which is a massive amount of money. So if it does work and provide dignity to people in retirement, then that's a massive thing, and I think something that should be commended. So yeah, really recommend reading it if you're interested in that kind of area of pensions thinking. Okay, well, thank you for watching Pensions in 10 with just me this week. Episode 99 this was, so I can't quite believe we've done so many. Episode 100 next week. I also had a significant birthday this weekend, ended in a 0. Quite glum about it, but we move on. But these big numbers, big moments are coming around. So next week, episode 100 of Pensions in 10. So do tune in next time. If you do enjoy these videos, you can subscribe via our website, get them delivered to your inbox on Wednesday. But if you do see them on LinkedIn or anywhere else, please do give us a like, give us a share to see if other people will enjoy them as well. They're just meant to be little snapshots into what's going on in the world of pensions. And so to keep you updated. So we'll continue to make them, but hopefully you continue to enjoy them. Thank you.